Howard leaving the MEAC is a tough blow for that conference. The NCAA releases their top 20 HBCU players to watch leading up into the draft, and TSU announces their new head women's basketball coach. Oh yeah, it's Locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked on HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And speaking of the Mouth of the South, I'm holding this microphone like this because it makes me feel like I'm finally living my dream of being a WWE wrestler. That's what it makes me feel like. I feel like I'm cutting a promo and I'm holding the mic. It just doesn't have the double W's with the red line underneath. But this is what it makes me feel like. So let's enjoy this 30-minute promo, this 30-minute journey that we're going to go on. And we're going to start off with the news this weekend that Howard is leaving, or at least preparing to leave the MEAC in favor of going to the CAA, a conference that it feels like everybody and their mama is going to. But let's get into it, because it almost feels like I'm not sure if these conferences are crumbling or if the CAA just comes a knocking and these teams see the opportunity that comes with that new conference and they say, well, I'm going to go there. I'm not sure. Now, just to be very clear, with the MEAC specifically, the MEAC is crumbling. The MEAC is very much so struggling. And this blow right here is just the latest. And I'm starting to look for either escape plans or survival plans, because it's getting into that mode where you need to start getting nervous. You need to start hesitating before you start partnering up with this conference. We have to understand, are they stable? Are teams going to come in here and want to be here for the long haul? Or is this going to be like North Carolina A&T stopping the Big South, which was a year and gone? Hampton, 2 years and gone. Is it going to be things like that? Now, the exodus of the mass exodus of the MEAC started 1-2 years ago. So this isn't something that we didn't see coming. And when I say that these conferences are struggling and are crumbling at the same time that the CAA comes a knocking, and I'm not sure if it's simultaneous or if it's a situation where the infrastructure is weak, I can see it in the MEAC. It's been happening. North Carolina A&T, Bethune-Cookman, Hampton, North Carolina A&T, now Howard. They're all gone. They're all leaving. This is not just a terrible look. See, some things are bad for optics. Some things are just bad. This is just bad. This doesn't look bad. It is bad. So you're starting to get into a situation where you're not looking like a trustworthy conference. And I feel bad because they have a new commissioner, and one who is really inherited a crumbling conference. And I don't mean to say that to be disrespectful towards the MEAC conference. I don't mean that at all. However, it's a situation where she just became the commissioner and these problems have been going on. North Carolina A&T just left. FAMU just left. Bethune-Cookman just left. All of those teams just left. And now she's been on the job for what? 3.5 months, and now Howard's gone. It's a tough situation. I mean, she's in it. She don't have no choice, but she's in it. She's going to be trying to grow, because there needs to be just some sort of resurgence, some type of revival, something when it comes to the MEAC brand. You need more teams. And something that's going to make it more attractive. I don't know if that's going to be non-HBCU FCS teams, because she has discussed that. I'm not personally a fan of that. That's not what I would want to do. I don't know if maybe you have to bring up some D2 HBCU schools, but I think that's the better choice, because every other team that is in the FCS is not in the HBCU conference, but is an HBCU on the FCS level, they just left the MEAC, except for Tennessee State. And Tennessee State, it just wouldn't make sense. I would much rather them partner with the SWAC. And it's not as if the MEAC's going to poach any teams from the SWAC. That would shock me. Right now, that feels too silly and too asinine to even have a real conversation about. That just does not feel like a likely course of action. Regardless of what it is, something needs to happen because you have 7 schools in there. You have 5 football teams in there. A 5-team football conference just isn't going to work. There needs to be a resurrection. There needs to be, and you need to bring somebody in, whether that's anybody, Savannah State, bring somebody in because it's not working. It's not. You're going to need to bring some people. Maybe you got to contact Bowie State. They've been turning into a conference powerhouse or a D2 powerhouse. Maybe see if they want to try their hand in the FCS. Something needs to change. But let's not only talk about the downside and the desperate need of a resurrection. Let's talk about why the CAA would even want Howard in the first place. See, we just got done talking about football. And that's not Howard's strong suit. They're real weak in football, but there's so many other reasons. And the number one reason is look at the brand. Howard is top 5 HBCU brands out there. Now, when I'm in school and I'm sitting there talking, hey man, there's more than just one HBCU. There's more than just 2 HBCUs. Those comments that we say at schools that have not received as much money as other schools, those schools that we're typically talking about are the Howards, the Morehouses, and that's no slight to them. There's no slight to them at all. But I'm just keeping it real, being completely transparent with you. And when I say that these conversations do happen, and you sitting here listening, if you didn't go to Howard, you didn't go to Morehouse, I'm sure you said the same thing. Just been like, man, every donation going to that school, that's because they're one of those schools, name recognition wise, that everybody knows. Everybody knows Howard. Everybody knows that school, So they're one of those schools, and they're not known exactly for the athletic profile. They're here for the academics, which lines up perfectly with what every single HBCU that has joined the CAA has said. It has always been about athletics and academics, and it always felt more so about the academic side of things. I think North Carolina A&T even said they joined this to level up their academic status to a level 1, So academics is huge for the conference, and that's what Howard is really known for. It's not to say anything about any other HBCU. That doesn't mean anything. So, or let me say that. It does not mean anything towards any other school. I didn't go to Howard. You think I disrespect my Texas Southern education? Not at all. But Howard is known for that. So they have a name recognition. I'm sure I know other schools have a larger athletic profile than them. However, when it comes to just being known, you're getting that. But let's not sit here and diminish everything that they've accomplished. On the men's side in basketball, they were top 2 in the conference. On the women's side in basketball, they tied for the conference championship in the regular season. They won it outright in the tournament and then made an NCAA tournament appearance. On the volleyball side, they tied for the regular season championship, and then they won the title in the tournament. And then right now, they're top 3 in softball. So let's not sit here and just act like because they're not good at football, they're slouches. Like I said, with the CAA, it's about athletics and academics meeting. They definitely knock it out the park with academics. They definitely do that. But let's not let the football record fool you and make you think that they don't perform well in athletics, because they fully do. And I think this is something that needs to be highlighted, because there's a reason that Howard was pretty attractive, and their attractiveness is part of the reason that the MEAC is crumbling. The two go hand in hand, and it's really that simple. Now, going forward, I want to talk about some of the HBCU players who are being put on the watch list for the NFL draft by the NCAA themselves. They have 20 athletes, and I have my 4 takeaways about that list. But first, let me tell you about Built Bar, because Built Bar is the best protein bar on the market, bar none. Matter of fact, I think I might get me one right after this. I got a cookies and cream waiting on me. I haven't tried that one yet, but I'm excited to try it because they have so many delicious flavors, and Built Bar has yet to fail me. Wouldn't fail you either. Make sure you go to built.com. You'll hear all about it at the end. But they're going to give me 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and all of the delicious flavors that I can ask for. Then you have don't forget it's covered in chocolate, right? So the taste is there. The taste is 100% there. And then you also have the Built Bar Puffs, where it's marshmallow covered in chocolate and still healthy. I'll say that again because it sounds unbelievable. You might need to hear it twice. It's covered in chocolate, covered with marshmallows, and still healthy. I ain't lying to you. Think I'm lying? Then go to built.com, and go use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your offer. All right, so keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget to check out the Locked On NFL mock draft show. It starts today. You can catch it on Odyssey or the podcast feed of the Locked On NFL draft, so you can know what all of our local experts think that their teams are going to pick in the draft. And starting on April 28th, the 29th, and the 30th, you will have live coverage of every single pick, every single round in the NFL draft. You can catch that on the Locked On NFL YouTube page. You can catch that on April 28th. The mock draft is up right now. Don't miss it. And our word of the day is resurrection. It means a resurgence or a revival. The MEAC is in desperate need of a resurgence, but it feels as if there is no need to have a resurgence for HBCU football. Everything is going well right now. The NCAA just released their top 20 HBCU players to watch out for heading into the NFL draft. And I have some takeaways from that. I have 4 specific takeaways. One, it's an even split of offense and defensive players. Not much small school representation, really. And then also, it's going to be a lot of players in camp. And the SWAC brings in the most amount of players. I want to elaborate on each one, but let's first get the 4 out. And we just did that. So let's talk about the fact that it's an even split. And I don't know if that was a formula deal where you wanted to have 10 offensive players, where you wanted to have 10 defensive players. I'm not sure if they decided, hey, we need to have equal sides. But I didn't really feel like there was anybody who was just an egregious miss. You might say Al Young. I think that Al Young was somebody who you could argue was deserving of this list, but he was on an honorable mention. So it's not as if he wasn't a part of the article. He just wasn't a part of the 20. So they gave you 20 players from their positions, what school they went to, gave a little backstory about every single one. But then they also gave you an honorable mention. Those guys just had their position and player in school. There was no story attached to them. So it was a 20-person list, about 10 extra. So you really had 30 names on the list. And that's what I mean when I say it's a resurgence. And I don't want to call it a resurrection as if it was dead, but it is a resurgence in coverage. It's a revival in coverage. But in addition to just the split of offense and defensive players, I also want to talk about the fact that there was some small school guys on there, and there was 3 of them. Specifically, it was Joshua Williamson. You know Joshua Williams out of Fayetteville State was going to be here. It almost feels unfair to call him a small school guy because a lot of times that means under the radar, but he doesn't really fit into that category. Everybody knows him. If you're talking about an HBCU player to the NFL draft list in 2022, and you're not including Joshua Williams on this list, throw the whole list away. It's not credible. It doesn't mean anything. Matter of fact, DM me the link at South Exclusives. We can have a good laugh about it. I might send you about 5 laughing emojis. Might send you a gif of Dave Chappelle laughing or something, because I love me some Chappelle gifs. GIFs. I don't know how you say it. Y'all let me know in the comments if you say GIF or GIF. I'll let you decide how you spell it to show the difference. But I'm a laugh because Joshua Williams deserves to be on every single list. This guy might be the first HBCU player drafted. So him not being on the list, you can write that person off. And I usually don't write people off because of one opinion, but you probably hating. I'm just being honest with you. You probably hating. But he's joined with his teammate Keyshawn James. I thought he was a little bit of a surprise, a welcome surprise though, because he's arguably my favorite under the radar HBCU prospect this year. So I really like Keyshawn James, and I have since the HBCU Combine. And then he's also joined by Will Adams, who he's a small school guy, but I'm not quite sure if he fits in the under the radar category. I haven't decided yet, but he's jumped to the front of everybody's mind with his crazy vertical and broad jump, right? Jump, vertical, broad. It's a knee slapper. Anyway, but I tickle myself sometimes. But let's also move and talk about the fact that there's going to be a lot of players in camp. This is a 20-person list. 20 players listed out, 10 honorable mentions. I'm seeing so many names that I've seen connected to teams. I've heard get draft buzz, and it's one thing when it's a bunch of players just individually. Oh, okay, Marquise Bell. Okay, yeah, Michael Badger. Oh, okay, Jerry Garner. Okay, Joshua Williams, Jacoby Durant. Oh, Cam Durley. It's one thing when you see them just going through your timeline. And I'm on my phone because There's so many things that separate them. Cause I see Batter Joe, but then I see this funny video, and then I see this tweet about the Saints, and then I see this other tweet about the Saints, and I go back to another funny video. Oh, there goes Jerry Gardner, and then now the next day I see Cam Durley, and I'm seeing all of these things, but it's separated. When it's one article with 20 players listed back to back to back to back to back to back to back, now I can't ignore it. It's all in my face, and I'm starting to realize the number of HBCU prospects getting attention is really growing. And you have to forgive me for my age. I'm not old, right? No offense, but I'm young. Let me say that. I just got out of college 2 years ago. So this is not something that has always just been on the front of my mind as far as looking at how many HBCU players are getting draft buzz. Now I've noticed how many HBCU players are in the league and everything, but the draft buzz is a little bit different because I'm not just studying the mid rounds and the late round draft picks throughout the draft all the time. It's just not what I'm doing. So I'm starting to see more than I typically see, more than I typically hear. I heard a little bit, but not as much as right now. If I'm wrong about that, forgive me for my age. It's just I don't see it often. And lastly, there's 11 players out of the SWAC that's on this list. And it's funny to me because they by far have the lead. But when it came to head-to-head competitions, they lost in the Celebration Bowl. And I know that's only one game and anything can happen in one game, but they lost there. And then in the Legacy Bowl, their team got beat and the best players looked like they were from the MEAC and the CIAA, or at least the best performances on that day. And it just didn't look like you would say, oh, the SWAC has the best players. They have 11. There's 3 players from the D2 ranks. I just went through those in my small school prospects. There's 2 from the there's 4 from the MEAC, and there's 2 from the unaffiliated HBCUs, 1 from North Carolina A&T, and then 1 from Tennessee State. But the SWAC has 11 players on that list. So it's absolutely crazy how dominant they are in that. But I did have a little bit of a chuckle. I'm a SWAC guy through and through. I did have a little bit of a chuckle at their own expense that they have these great lead and top flight players. But when it came down to it and head to head, it just didn't look like that. And that don't mean nothing. It don't mean nothing but mean nothing, okay? I'm just saying. It just was funny to me. It made me laugh. But one thing that's not a laughing matter is the new Texas Southern women's basketball coach. And I want to go through her resume and everything she did leading up to this chance at Texas Southern. Tiger Nation, you should be excited. And I'm going to tell you why. But first, I want to tell you about betonline.net, because betonline.net is the #1 place for all of your sports wagering. The NBA playoffs are here. And you're putting any kind of money down, this is where you need to do it. Now, the Timberwolves just knocked off and upset the Memphis Grizzlies in game 1. But they're going into game 2 as a 7-point underdog. I just think that's an interesting line that you might want to watch. I like the Grizzlies. My favorite player in the league is Ja. 7 points. I don't know if you want to take that one, but that's something to watch. In addition to that, you have the MLB. You have everything going on as far as over-unders and player performance props. All of those things are available on betonline.net. And even if you don't want to wager on the sports, you can do your favorite Vegas casino games. They're so versatile. That's why I love talking about Built Bar and BetOnline, because they have those things in common, the versatility that makes them great. So make sure that you're going to BetOnline, because BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, Texas Southern has a new women's basketball coach, and she goes by the name Vernette Skeet, and she is somebody that you should be excited about. And I want to look at the road that she took here. Now, with filling this vacancy, it was something that I was definitely keeping my eye on, because as an alum, I want to see how you're going to replace Coach Coop. I love Coop, but I think that they got somebody right here, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm not somebody who I try not to just come up here and just blow hot air and just blow smoke at you. I try not to do that. If I don't like something, I'll tell you I don't like it, or I just won't talk about it. I don't try to come in here and talk about things I don't like and sugarcoat it. We've seen it. If you follow this, you understand. I'm not gonna hold my tongue if I'm gonna talk about it. It's just that simple. If I'm talking about it, I'm gonna give you the real. I'm going to give you what I feel. That's just how I operate, right? So With the new coach, she comes into TSU from Texas A&M, where she was a co-associate head coach. And basically, that's one of those positions that just kind of sets you up to be a head coach next. And that's exactly what happened with her. But I thought it was interesting because the timing was perfect. See, Skeety was a co-associate head coach for Coach Blair. Coach Blair retired at Texas A&M. He retired in the offseason. So now you're going to get a new head coach. And I'm sure when he comes out with his retirement, you sitting there thinking, well, what's going to happen with me? What am I going to do? Well, the exact thing that your job was set up for you to do, you ended up doing in that offseason. So it was perfect time for Coach and TSU to come together. It was absolutely perfect time. And so instead of just wondering where my next job was going to come from after he retired and the new coach came in and whatnot, in the offseason, you went from having that question to being like, okay, how am I going to fill out this roster now? And it's a different conversation, and definitely one that you are more, you would want to have. You would want to have the conversation of how am I going to fill out this roster as opposed to how am I going to fill out this application to get me a job. It's completely different. That's what you want to do. And let's talk about her, because before I get into her resume as far as where she's been, because she's a decorated assistant and coach and player, before we get into that, I want to talk about the cosign that she got. She got the cosign from Don Staley. I'm talking about one of the greatest to ever do it. So once you get the Don Staley cosign, you're probably looking like, all right, I'm excited. I don't know about you, but I'm excited. And here's exactly what Coach said. She said, Coach Staley said, and she said, congratulations, Skeet. You're going to do well, pulling for you. Now, I understand. A lot of times, those are the things that people say just to coworkers. It happens. I don't care. I don't think I'm looking for reasons to be excited, because I could care less. I'm all about what goes on the floor. I'm all about that. So you getting cosigns and whatnot, that don't matter to me. But when it's Coach Staley, it means something. If that doesn't get you excited or it doesn't get you satisfied with the hire, that I'm excited and satisfied for the two of us. I'm okay with that. All right, Tiger Nation, I'm excited for both of us. It's all good. Don't worry about it. But if that doesn't do it for you, let's look at her resume, because prior to getting to Texas A&M, she was a decorated assistant. She was an assistant at Illinois, Marquette, University of Miami, the one in Florida, not Ohio. And she was at Marquette for the longest, that being 6 years. That was her longest tenure. So she's been around the big programs. But if that's just not enough, because nothing prepares you for being a head coach like being a head coach, well, let's talk about it. She was a head coach at Gulf Coast State, which is where she started her collegiate career. She was also a coach at her high school, but we're going to focus on the collegiate ranks because college is college. And even though it's at a different division, it's still collegiate head coaching. And in that, she was a regional head coach of the year. She was a conference head coach of the year. And she was just a state of Florida head coach of the year. So she was very decorated as a winner. And she ended her tenure there at a 49-13 record at the school, finished fourth in the NJCAA tournament. So you see that she had a lot of success. But let's also look at who she was as a player, because as a coach, success has followed her. We knew that she had success as a head coach. That should get you hyped. As a player, she was on the team with 75-1. Yes, you don't have to rewind me. I'll tell you again. The team went 75-1. That's crazy, right? But that's what the team did. And then she also, just a little partially to put it on top, she's familiar with the HBCUs as she finished her career at Alcorn State. So finish your career at Alcorn State after having a phenomenal run at Gulf Coast State, and then going on to your alma mater and actually coaching and having a really good record and being the coach of the year, and then going up to these high-profile schools and learning after some legends, being an assistant, a co-associate head coach on a Hall of Famer. So I'm excited. Vanette Skeet, I think she's the right person for the job. And I'm excited to see where she takes the best HBCU in the land, Texas Southern, the women's basketball team, to new heights. I'm excited to see what level that she takes it to. I'm also excited to see what levels that we take the HBCU, the Locked On HBCU podcast to, because with y'all making us your first listen of the day every day, I know that is going to be a good episode. And for your second listen of the day, make sure that you're checking out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. We're only 2 weeks away. Not just this week or this week past, and then we're in draft week. The mock draft is here. I'm excited. It's Eric Crocker, Ryan Tracy, breaking everything down that you could possibly need for the NFL draft next week. Get on that. You don't want to miss a single word. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, my bad. I really thought I was in the WWE. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace. And that's the bottom line.